Hereby, I open this academic ceremony in which Ferdi Widiputera will defend his academic thesis, Diversity in Higher Education, Insights and Implications. May I now invite you, Ferdi, to present a summary of your study and the conclusions of your thesis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prorector. Dear Mr. Prorector, dear members of the Corona, dear supervisors, dear family and friends.
Do you wish to share your screen with us?
Okay.
Thank you. That's better. We can see it now.
Okay. Now you can see the presentation, sir?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay. Dear Mr. Prorector, dear members of the Corona, dear supervisors, dear family and friend, good morning, everyone. It's my great honor and privilege to stand before you today for the public defense of my doctoral dissertation with the title Diversity in Higher Education, Insight in and Implications. Thank you all for being here to share this moment with me. Your presence is invaluable, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to present my work to such a distinguished audience. So I'd like to present the motivation to conduct this doctoral dissertation, which lies several gaps that were identified in the existing literature on the understanding of diversity in higher education. As a first gap, we noticed that despite the increasing of focus on diversity in academic discourse, there is a notable lack of empirical evidence on how to effectively measure diversity within higher education institutions. The second gap, there is an insufficient understanding of the factor that makes certain educational program more attractive to students than others. So this gap hinders the ability to develop strategies to increase program attractiveness and inclusiveness. As for the third gap, we also notice while student satisfaction often associated with higher enrollment rates, there is a limited empirical evidence to say that there is a clear causal relationship between these two variables. So understanding this relationship is important to improve student retention and institution effectiveness. Last but not least, although there is an extensive literature on dropout rates, student satisfaction and academic success, the specific impact of student dropout on overall graduation rates remains unclear. So this dissertation aims to understand on how dropout rates affect graduation outcome. The next slide presents the objective of this dissertation. This dissertation aims to provide a comprehensive analysis of various factors influencing higher education institutions. The overall objective is to offer evidence-based insight on the relationship between program attractiveness, student satisfaction, dropout rates, and student success. So from this overall objective, I deduce for specific sub-objectives. The first is to assess the importance of diversity in enrollment in higher education program and institution using multiple measurement approach, thereby contributing to a deeper understanding of how diversity impact of institutional effectiveness and student outcome. Second sub-objective is to identify and analyze the factors that contribute to the attractiveness of specific program within institution in order to help institution better tailor their offering to meet student needs and preferences. While the third sub-objective is to examine how student satisfaction influence enrollment in program, providing insight that can help improve student retention and engagement. The last sub-objective is to examine the relationship between dropout rates, student satisfaction, and overall student success at institution of higher education, with the goal of identifying key factors that can improve student retention and success. On the next slide, we provide some information on the data that we use. The data that are used in the dissertation are coming from sources. First, we rely on data source from the Dutch Ministry of Education, or the DUO. This data set provides detailed information on the number of students enrolled in different institutions and programs. Second, we use data from the Studiepuzzle 123 data set. These data provide insight into student preference and decision-making process regarding the selection of higher education. The third, we derive data from the National Student Survey. This data set captures student feedback on their educational experience and provide valuable information on satisfaction level across institution and program. And fourth, we provide data from Statistics Netherlands, CBS. This data contain essential institution data that support on analysis of the various factors that influence higher education outcome. Having discussed the data, we will now present the methods. This dissertation uses a variety of quantitative research methods to analyze different aspects of higher education in the Netherlands. So this method includes first measurement of diversity and concentration, which is the Herfindahl index. This index is used to measure concentration of student population within higher education institution. Gini coefficient, this inequality measure is applied to assess the inequality in student distribution across different program and institution. The tail entropy is also inequality measure that is utilized to evaluate the diversity within higher education institution by examining the distribution of students. Beer-bound index, this index also employ to measure the diversity and concentration of academic program within institution. Second, for the analysis of program attractiveness, IV regression is used to identify and analyze the factors that influence the attractiveness of various academic programs. The third is for the impact of student satisfaction on enrollment. We use regression discontinuity design. This applies to examine the causal impact of student satisfaction on program enrollment. The last method is for the relationship between dropout rate, satisfaction, and success. We use IV quantile regression to assess the relationship between student dropout, satisfaction, and academic success across different quantile. On the next slide, we present the result of chapter 2, titled How Can Diversity in Higher Education Be Measured? So following the research question, how can diversity in higher education be effectively measured? Chapter 2 of the dissertation make a significant contribution by introducing a methodological framework that includes the Herfindahl index, Gini coefficient, tail entropy, and Beer-bound index to measure diversity within institution. This provide empirical insight of diversity in student enrollment at the master's, bachelor levels, highlighting disparities across institutions and disciplines, emphasizing the need for targeted policy intervention to promote inclusiveness. Next slide, we present the result of chapter 2. First, results show different level of concentration and diversity in different institutions and academic programs in the Netherlands. Second, by using this Herfindahl index, Gini coefficient, tail entropy, and Beer-bound index, the analysis provide insight into the dynamic of diversity within higher education. The last results show an overall increase in diversity at the master and first year level, which can attribute to an increase in the number of enrolled students. We move on to chapter 3, which is address the following research question. What factor makes certain program more attractive to students than the others? Our aim is to identify and analyze the factor that influence student decision in choosing study program. This is done by adding distance and competition as a choice of variable. Distance is a measure as the closest distance between similar program offered by different institutions. So this variable captures the geographic proximity of program to student location and assess how distance influence enrollment decision. Population density within a 50-kilometer radius and a population density by province are used as a IV to address endogeneity concern related to distance. And competition is operationalized as the level of competition between similar programs offered by different institutions. So this variable assesses the competitiveness environment in higher education and its impact on student preference. This chapter uses a two-stage empirical framework where the first step of the IV analysis estimate the relationship between population density and the closest distance between similar programs. This step will help to validate the instrument and assess their relevance in explaining variation in distance. In the second stage, the IV approach is used to examine the impact of proximity on student enrollment. On the next slide, we present the result. The result reveals that a closer distance between similar programs offered by different institutions has a significant impact on student enrollment decision. Students are more likely to choose programs that are geographically closer together, indicating the importance of proximity in program selection. The analysis demonstrates that competition between programs influences their attractiveness to students. Higher level of competition lead to increased scrutiny and comparison among programs, affecting student perception, enrollment, preferences. In chapter 4, we address the following research question. Does student satisfaction influence enrollment in higher education program? The contribution of this chapter is that highlight the significant impact of student satisfaction on enrollment in higher education program. Positive student experience and satisfaction level are found to be associated with higher enrollment rate, indicating the importance of addressing student needs and preference to attract and retain students in academic program. In addition, the chapter used a regression discontinuity design to examine the causal effect of student satisfaction on enrollment. So by utilizing this methodological approach, this study is able to develop a more robust understanding of how variation in student satisfaction affect enrollment decision, providing insight for program improvement and student recruitment strategies. On the next slide, we present the result. The result indicated that student satisfaction play a critical role influencing enrollment decision in higher education program. Programs with higher level of student satisfaction are more likely to attract larger number of students, highlighting the importance of addressing student needs and preference to increase program attractiveness. The chapter used a regression discontinuity and a specific satisfaction score to analyze the relationship between satisfaction and enrollment outcome. So the results show that students are significantly more likely to choose programs that meet the satisfaction score criterion, highlighting the impact of satisfaction on student choice. The final empirical chapter is M2, understand the impact of dropout student satisfaction on student success. Address the following research question. How do student dropout rates and student satisfaction affect student success in higher education program? This chapter contributes by using IV quantile regression to estimate the effect student dropout, satisfaction and dismissal policy and on graduation rate in bachelor degree program. By using dismissal policy as an instrument for the endogeneity of students dropout, the study overcome potential biases and identify the causal impact of this factor on student success outcome. The IV approach helps mitigate endogeneity concern that may arise when examining the relationship between student dropout satisfaction and graduation rate. Next, we present the finding. This chapter suggests that how institutions handle the dismissal of students, for example, poor academic performance, significantly affect the graduation rate of students at different level of or group within the student population. This referred to as a different quantile. There is a positive correlation between increased study time and the number of students who graduate. This suggests that both of longer study time, larger student population are associated with the higher graduation rate. In other words, as students spend more time studying and as the number of students enrolled increase, graduation rate tend to improve. On the last slide, we present our conclusion. First, and also the policy implication. First, we can conclude the diversity at the master level has increased due to increased enrollment. This means that more students are pursuing master degree in wider range of discipline or field of study. At the bachelor level, however, this diversity has decreased. The decline in diversity at the bachelor level highlights a potential problem with inclusivity in undergraduate program. Intervention are needed to address this and to ensure that undergraduate program attract a wide range of students from diverse background. Second conclusion, when students decide whether to enroll in particular program, their satisfaction with various aspects of the program or institution play a critical role. Institution must prioritize factors that enhance student satisfaction in order to effectively attract and retain students. As far for the last conclusion, dismissal policy plays a significant role in influencing graduation rate with strong effect observed across quantile. Non-dismissal policy, particularly when applied to low quantile, negatively affect graduation rate, highlighting potential challenge to student persistence and success. Overall, the finding underscore the importance of implementing effective dismissal policy and intervention to support student retention and improve graduation outcome in higher education. This conclusion have the following implication. Policymakers should prioritize measures to improve the accessibility of higher education institutions for students. This could include improving transportation and connectivity to reduce perceived barriers and attracts a broader pool of students. Encouraging healthy competition among higher education institutions can lead to the development of more diverse and reputable degree programs. By supporting initiatives that encourage innovation collaboration among institutions, policy can create an environment that attracts students seeking a quality education. Policy should prioritize policy that ensure quality education, robust study support, service, and positive learning environment. This includes implementing strategies such as early intervention program, career counseling, flexible learning option to increase student satisfaction retention. Government should maintain a clear dismissal policy to maintain academic and behavioral standard and thereby reduce dropout rate. Thank you for your attention. I welcome any question or comment or you may have, especially for the highly esteemed opponent, and I give the word back to the prorector.
Thank you very much for your presentation. The opposition will be opened by Professor Franziska Gassmann, Professor of Social Protection and Development at Maastricht University and the Chair of the Assessment Committee. Professor Gassmann.
Dear candidate, first let me congratulate with your thesis, which I have read with great interest because you know, we are all here, we work at higher education institutions, and every year we actually hope that there will be enough students enrolling in our programs. And again, also in our master program, it's now the time, how many students will we have in September and will we have enough? So in your thesis, you analyze the attractiveness of higher education institutions in the Netherlands, and it is also, I'm not sure, so it's very interesting with respect also to your topic. So in your analysis, you assess the determinants of students' program preferences, the impact of satisfaction on enrollment rates, and you also study dropout and academic success. It was a pleasure to read your thesis, and it also shows that you master a variety of empirical methods. But we are not only here to praise your work, but we also would like to challenge some of the choices you have made. Given that I'm the first one to talk to you, I would like to have it a little bit broader and to some extent relate also to your first chapter, but also to the conclusions that you actually make. So the thesis is focused on higher education in the Netherlands and the different factors that make the programs attractive for the students. If we look at the official numbers, actually, I would say that higher education has or remains as attractive as it has always been. Maybe the numbers are going down slightly, but this also has to do with smaller age cohorts to some extent. But things on the surface seem to be rather fine. Now, I really would like you to explain to me again, to us, why is diversity important and what kind of diversity is so important? And I also would like to, given the, let's say, the conclusions that you have drawn, let's say, for example, you know, that you also say there is equitable access from diverse geographical location, factors that make a program more attractive will result in student enrollment and so on. And you are now, how can you extend the conclusions from the Netherlands to your own country, Indonesia? Thank you.
Dear highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your kind word, your compliment. This means a lot to me. So in regard to your question, this is about the why diversity is important. So I try to highlight why this diversity is important. And then the next will be about the conclusion about the chapters, and then compare with the Indonesians country. So there is in regard of the why diversity important. So this is actually there is several reasons that I would like to explain regarding the diversity, the importance of the diversity. So the reason is that there is also diversity which bring together individuals, varied background experiences, and perspective, which is creating rich and dynamic learning environment. So this is about the learning environment. And then also the reason that it also can be able to promote to inclusivity. Embracing diversity promote inclusivity by creating a welcome, supportive academic community where all individuals feel valued. And then the third is in a world characterized by increasing interconnectedness and diversity. So it will exposure the diverse perspective in higher education, which is will prepare individual to navigate global challenges. And then also it's about innovation and creativity. So this diversity and academic communities can be more innovative and creative. So different kind of perspective and approach to problem solving can lead to breakthrough in research, for example, teaching, and then also social impact. And then the last reason why this diversity is so important, that promoting diversity in higher education is essential to address historical inequality and promoting, of course, the social justice. So this by providing the opportunity for individual, for underrepresented group, the higher education institution can able to contribute to a more equitable society. So this type of diversity that are important in education, higher education. So there is a various dimension actually. The various dimension that we choose focus on our topic, higher educations, that there is a student diversity which represent a variety of background. This also, I believe, include race, ethnicity, genders, and then of course religion, socioeconomic status, include disability status. This is in regard of student diversity. So it's essential for creating a diverse student body that reflect the broader society. The second diversity is programmatic diversity. So this programmatic diversity is offering a wide range of academic programs, of course, discipline, and then research area that ensure that students will have access to diverse educational opportunity in order to cater to their interests and career goals. And the third diversity is institutional diversity. Diversity within institution, including this faculty, staff, leadership, which contribute to a vibrant academic community and promote diverse role model for students. And the last, after this institutional diversity, there is also cultural diversity, which can embrace diverse cultural perspective and value, which enrich the academic performance. That also promote cross-cultural understanding and prepare students to engage with a globalized world. So this diversity, which is that I mentioned before, from student diversity and cultural diversity, this is also applied in our dissertations. So diversity in higher education is really important, which is we can be able to create inclusive, innovative, and then equitable academic environment, and then also prepare individual for success in a diverse and interconnected world. This is very important. And then also embracing various forms of diversity. Also include student, programmatic, institutional, and cultural diversity. Thank you.
Can you just very quickly, so say what then do you take this to the Indonesian context? quickly.
So about the comparison to the Indonesian, yeah, it's really big country, as you know, because a lot of diversity that can able to determine whether which data diversity will able to use in the Indonesian cases, yeah. So this diversity, perhaps we can also suggest that in the context of Indonesia, a lot of diversity that will able to do the dimension of the range of reflect to the rich cultural, ethnic, and then also linguistic diversity. For example, the ethnic diversity. So Indonesia is a home of numerous ethnic group, which is we have own language, custom, and tradition. So embracing ethnic diversity in higher education can help celebrate, preserve Indonesian culture heritage. We also have religious diversity. So if we mention about the religious diversity, Indonesia also known as a religious diversity. You know, as Islam being the predominant religion alongside the other religions. So this is also diversity that we can able to do in higher education. Of course, there is also linguistic diversity, socio-economic diversity, and then the last is regional diversity. So this kind of diversity, by recognizing, then embracing this diverse dimension of Indonesian society within higher education, this will be foster a more inclusive, equitable, and cultural rich academic environment. So of course, at the end, prepare students to thrive in a diverse and interconnected world. So the important promoting diversity, also same like the one that in the Netherlands, is not only a matter of a strategic imperative, but also cohesive and progress society. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. The opposition will be continued by Professor Berend van de Meulen, who's the Professor of Institutional Aspects of Higher Education at the University of Twente.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, dear candidate, for this dissertation, which is addressing, I would say, a intriguing and difficult topic. It's in a kind of very a brave attempt that you have made. Brave in the sense that you use or focus on a topic which is in itself very diverse and not well described, especially in policy making. So there is a range of different diversities in higher education, and you just showed that in your answer to colleague Gassman, Professor Gassman, that there is all these versions of diversity. So if we speak about diversity in higher education, it is important that we specify what kind of diversity. And I was taken by your very strong policy recommendations at the end that government should be more involved and higher education policy should take more into account diversity and stimulate diversity. Now, I want you to... Then there is a dilemma, I think, in that sense, because you can say that if programs are very diverse, that students find as customers the right program that fits their characteristics and their needs, etc., which in a way creates a situation that within the programs, the diversity of students decreases and the diversity between programs increases. And you can see that to some extent if you look at the student population here in Twente, where I now lecture, is very different than the student population than in Amsterdam, where I did my studies. It's different kinds of students, and I think that there is some kind of relationship between the kind of culture and way we organize, and also the culture here in at the university in Twente, which makes students more make that university more attractive to students than for the students in Amsterdam, and vice versa. So students who like Amsterdam goes to Amsterdam, and students who like Twente go to Twente. And you see that also in the results of the national student evaluations. The question then is, if that's the case, on which diversity should the government focus if it stimulates diversity? But more importantly, you could question whether the government should intervene in these forms of diversity, because one of the experiences is that as soon as the government intervenes, it gives the kinds of similar signals to the institutions, which makes the institutions more similar and results in standardization. So my first question is that, what do you think? Why do you think that the government should intervene? And in what way to increase diversity? And what kind of diversity should be increased? Is it student diversity within programs or diversity between programs?
Dear esteemed opponent, thank you for the compliments. And then also thank you for your opinion regarding my dissertations. So in regard to your question, I believe it's about the policy recommendations, this is related to the government. So what should government do to stimulate diversity, and then how to interfere this kind of diversity, which diversity that maybe can be able to involve to this kind of recommendations. So this policy recommendation is really important. I mean, if we look up to the finding in our our dissertations, so the government actually perhaps should be focused on the following key dimensions, which is the diversity should be prioritized. So for example, before, when I explain about the situation of Indonesia, this is also something that we can also follow for the dimension that the diversity will be prioritized by the government. For example, ethnic and cultural diversity. This is also same applicable that the one that in Indonesia. So given this kind of diverse ethnic and cultural landscape, I believe the government should prioritize initiatives that should preserve the country cultural heritage within the higher education institution. So this should promote ethnic and cultural diversity, which at the end can able to enrich the learning environment. This is the first of the ethnic of cultural diversity. And then also we have also situation like socio-economic diversity. So by addressing this socio-economic diversity in higher education, I believe the government interfere to provide financial support. For example, like scholarship, mentorship program, or perhaps like promote socio-economic diversity and then create a more inclusivity educational system. And then the third, same like also the one that we also applied in Indonesia, for example, like regional diversity. So this kind of unique characteristic and challenge can be able to give benefit from tailored educational program and initiative. So by focusing this regional diversity in higher educations, the government can able to support the development of region-specific knowledge, skill, solutions, and then solutions that address the need of different community across the country. And then also,
again, I understand your plea that the government should intervene, but my question started with the tensions between different forms of diversity, and I'll understand from your answer that you say, well, it should focus on diversity within the institutions, and that institutions are open to different students from different cultural and economic backgrounds. The question then still is whether the government should really intervene, and how the government should intervene, with the experience that government interventions often leads to standardization of higher education instead of more diverse higher education.
Okay.
Can I ask you to make your remarks relatively brief in answer to this question?
Thank you, highly esteemed opponent. So the government intervention, which is stimulating diversity in higher educations, the government support for diversity initiative first is essential is to establish and maintain quality assurance mechanism in higher education. This is the first. And then the second is about promoting equity and access. So government intervention is necessary to promote equity and access in higher education. Of course, by implementing policies that support underrepresented groups. And then we have also government should support research and innovation in higher education. And then the last is addressing skill mismatch. For example, like government can help address skill mismatch in the labor market by aligning higher education program with industry needs. So this should be matched with the industry needs about the addressing skill mismatch.
Okay,
In regard of regulating and monitoring, also government interference is also necessary to regulate higher education by monitor compliance with laws and regulations. So address issues such as, for example, academic integrity, student welfare, etc. And then also government should develop strategic plans and policy for higher educations. And then the last is government also should promote internationalizing in higher educations. So by attracting these international students and researchers, I believe enhance the global reputation of their university, also will able to contribute to the global competitiveness of their higher education sector. So this government interferences in higher education is very essential in stimulating of diversity, from the ensuring quality, equity, innovation, and then of course relevance each of the sectors, of course by providing regulatory frameworks, financial support, strategic planning, and then oversights. So government can contribute to the development of robust and inclusive higher education system, which is the need of the students, of course, society, and then the last is economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your answer. The opposition will be continued by Dr. Denny Mazrakai, who's the Assistant Professor of Sociology at the University of Utrecht.
Dear candidates, first of all, well done on your dissertation. It's very interesting and policy relevant, and I especially appreciated the methodological rigor with which you approached these questions. I do have two questions about the methodology, though. So in chapter 4, you claim you study the causal impact of student satisfaction on enrollment in higher education programs. But student satisfaction surveys, the participation in them is not that random, I would say. So the people who participate in these surveys, they may be more dissatisfied with the program than they are satisfied. So I would argue that the threshold is not exogenous at all here. There may be significant selection bias. So the question is then, how causal are these findings? And if they're not that causal, then why not simply use methods such as linear regression? And my other question is chapter 5. So you indicate that higher dropout rates are associated with lower graduation rates, but you have a sample of 300 observations, and the instrumental variables results only hold for the compliers. So it's not actually even these 300 observations, it's the compliers within these 300 observations. So I would say that the external validity is not that big. So the question is, again, why use such an advanced method if the data does not seem that particularly suited for these methods? Yeah, that was it.
So, dear estimate opponent.
And sorry to interrupt. Can I ask you to try and keep your answers relatively brief? We have 3 more people who would like to ask questions.
Yes. Thank you for your question, highly estimate opponent. So this is regarding in chapter 4 and chapter 5. This is a very technical questions in regard how we use also this kind of data, and then also about the methodologies. So the first thing that about the data itself, because there is a consider causal due to several reasons. So for example, like the first, the correlation versus of the quotient. So the finding in chapter 4 in between variable, for example, like student satisfaction and enrollment, is establish a causal relationship, which is while the study may identify the association between factors. And then also we have the confounding variables, which is the variable that can complicate the establish of causality. Of course, that you already mentioned is about the endogeneity issues. So where the relationship between the variable is influenced by the unobserved factors. This is also challenged us in order to interpret of the finding. There is also a feedback of loop of reverse of quotients, which is also this become more challenging in order to determine the direction of the causality. Of course, there is also a selection of the bias. So certain of characteristic of the sample populations influence the result. So the causal interpretation of the findings, at the end, there are a systematic difference between the group causality also may be obscure. This is also in related to the data limitation. The limitation of the data used for the analysis also having this kind of measurement error. So this can able to affect the ability to establish the causality. And then also, this also regard in the methodological constraint. So the methodological that we use, employ in the study, for example, statistic technique, and then also we add some control variables, may not be also sufficient to establish the causality. However, also we do the robust experimental designs. For example, that we use the instrumental variable in order to address endogeneity causal inference that may be limited. And then also the factor, for example, like institutional characteristic, and then also external influences also can able to impact the ability to draw causal conclusions. This is also challenge us in order to do the conclusion and the interpretations. So this kind of findings, however, at the end will be giving us valuables, yeah, to know the relationship between the student satisfaction and enrollment rate in higher education program, especially in the chapter 4. Addressing this kind of limitation, I believe we should do some future research in order to address this kind of limitations. The question in chapter 5, the use of the methodologies, we use also the advanced methodologies, which is the regression discontinuity designs. And then, of course, IV regressions. This is also able to do the addressing the endogeneity. So the advanced method like this kind of IV instrumental analysis also will address endogeneity issue that may arise. So by using this instrumental variable, are theoretically will be knowing the unrelated to the outcome, but correlated with the explanatory variables. So I believe this study can be able to mitigate these biases and improve the validity of the causal interferences. And regard of causal interferences also, we provide also a robust framework, which is I already mentioned with this RDD and then also with the IV, establish the causal relationship between these variables. Of course, by controlling for confounding factors. So this kind of thing will be able to address this selection bias. And then identification causal mechanism, which is this method enhance the ability to draw causal interference from observational data in higher education research. And then also we have a result like, for example, like methodological rigor, which is using the advanced method. In chapter 5, our study also be able to employ the statistic technique that the credibility of the robustness, which is our finding, will contribute to the advancement of knowledge in the field of higher education. At the end, it's about the policy implication. So this kind of use of these advanced methods in chapter 5 will able to generate findings, which is direct policy implications for improving student outcomes. Yeah, of course, at the end, reducing dropout rates, and then graduation rate, enhancing graduation rate, in higher education. So by identifying effective strategies and intervention, this study in the chapter 5, of course, can inform evidence-based policy decision in the education sectors. And then last but not least, also contribution to the literature. So this kind of advanced method in chapter 5 will give the rigor, validity, and relevance of the research findings, which is by expanding this kind of methodological toolkit and exploring the innovative approach. So this study will able to push the boundaries of the knowledge. And of course, giving the new insight into the complex of dynamics of student success in higher education. Thank you.
The opposition will be continued by Dr. Mindel van der Laar, who's the head of the Capacity Development Office at UNU Merit at Maastricht University. Dr. van der Laar.
Thank you, dear candidates. Let me join my colleagues in my congratulations to you in completing this dissertation. Like all of you, I also think that higher education is an important sector, especially also in light of SDG 4, and that diversity in higher education matters a lot. What we did see, though, is that your thesis focuses on the years 2009 to 2014, and we see the field moving very fast in the last decade. We had COVID, we had Me Too, we had Black Lives Matter movements that internationally reshaped the field, but also in the Netherlands, we see a lot of change. We now have a government that focuses on the national field more than international, and whereas in the time of your studies, international education and attracting international students for our higher education was key. Currently, we have a housing problem, and the Dutch government does not want us to attract international students. In fact, they want us to offer our programs in Dutch and not in English anymore. Maximum 10%, 15% should be English language education. And likely as a result of all these changes, our diversity in programs as well as in student population will go down in the coming years. If I interpret your talk so far correctly, you think that that is a negative situation. So I would like to ask you how you think, what could potentially be the consequences of such policy change in the shorter run and maybe in the longer run? Thank you.
The consequences. This is about the policy implication, the consequences. Dear esteemed opponent, thank you for your question. It's really a very good question in regard of diversity in my dissertations. So the question is about the consequences of the such a policy that this kind of policy will be used in the near future, I believe. So the implementation of policy, I believe this is also may include the strategies to address this kind of situations. As I mentioned before, the policy, for example, like we should improve student success, for example. So the effective policy, for example, the one that we already mentioned about the dismissal policies, it's aimed to reduce the dropout rates actually, and then also increase the students' satisfaction. At the end, will lead to improve student success. So this kind of the process at the end is about the student success, and then of course retention in higher education. So I believe by addressing the factor that contribute to the students' attrition, for example, like academic challenge, and then of course we also lack of the support or dissatisfaction of students with the learning of environment. I believe that the institution can enhance the student outcome and graduation rates. So this is also in regard of how to increase the graduation rates. The policy consequences of the policy should focus on addressing student dropouts and then also promote these student satisfactions. At the end, as I mentioned before, will be result increased graduation rates, of course, higher rates of degree completions. So this adequate support, resources, and intervention, I believe will able to help students to overcome the challenge. And then, of course, at the end, succeed academically. So institution can boost graduation and then produce, of course, more qualified, what we call graduates. Of course, the policy should prioritize student satisfaction and success, which is contribute to overall enhanced student experience. So by creating this supportive and then engaged learning environment, of course, addressing student needs, and then promoting a culture of academic of excellence, I believe institution can foster a positive and fulfilling education experience, of course, at the end for the students. This also we try to explain about the policy challenge. The implementation of policy, which is based on the what we call research findings, present challenge such as, for example, resource constraint, resistant to change, and then the need on ongoing evaluation and adaptation. So I believe by ensuring this kind of the sustainability and effectiveness of policies in regard of these policies, will able to continuous by monitoring feedback mechanism, and then also at the end is stakeholder engagement. So this kind of consequence of implementing policy will have potential, which is positively impact what we call student outcome, institutional performance, and then at the end, the overall quality of higher education.
Thank you for your answer. The opposition will be continued by Professor Trudy Schills, who is the Professor of the Economics of Education here at Maastricht University. Professor Schills.
Yes, thank you, Pro-Rector. Dear candidate, let me also congratulate with your thesis, and let me move directly into my question because we have limited time. I will follow up on the question of Dr. van der Laag, because in chapter 3, you argued that distance and competition are the two main variables to work on for higher institutes. However, at the moment, there is a huge debate in the Netherlands on housing shortage. So for the University of Maastricht, for example, but for many other universities, distance is not something that they might impact because they don't have living arrangements. So that might limit the competition also because, yeah, I guess then you need to do a lot in competition. And I was wondering whether you have a solution to this tension or this problem, and whether this problem is similar for higher education academic institutes and for higher vocational institutes, or whether there's a difference.
Okay. Dear esteemed opponent, thank you for your question. And then also thank you for your appreciation about my dissertations. This is in regard of the solutions about our variable that we use, the distance and competitions. So in regard of the solutions on how this kind of competition and then also the distance itself also can be able to do the what we call is the solution in the Netherlands. So we should knowing this kind of variable, which is the distance, the complexity of also the competitions. So for example, like this. So the focus on how to examine the program attractiveness, we have the following distance and then the competition as the variables. So the solution in order to do the addressing this kind of challenge, we should explore the factor that influence student preference and enrollment in higher education programs. So I mean, understanding what attracts students to certain program can help institutions tailor their offerings. Of course, the competition distance also will be able to do the what we call is increase the diverse academic interest and then also the program diversity. And then also we should also doing some kind of rigorous academic standard, and then of course quality assurance in regard of the education and educational systems by ensuring program quality, faculty expertise, and then of course the learning outcome. This kind of thing can contribute to the student at the end satisfaction, retention, and then at the end overall success in higher education. So the commitment, which is, for example, like the students in the Netherlands, which is personalized education and student engagement. So it can create a supportive and interactive learning environment, which is at the end will able to foster student success and satisfaction. So this kind of variable, which is distance and competition, is really important in order how to attract students in order to choose their programs. So this kind of two main variable, instead of relying of proximity of geographical location as a key of factor of program attractiveness, so the institution should try to differentiate their program based on unique features, the specializations, and then the strength, of course. So by offering distinct academic offering, innovative learning, experience, of course, specialized track, institution can attract students based on program quality relevance rather than the distance. This is also applied to the vocational education beside the universities applications. Also, we should emphasize the quality of program. This is also the one that I already mentioned.
You're muted.
You may finish your answer if you have, if you can do so in a minute. 1 minute.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I believe basically we should provide support this kind of strategy and then focus on factors beyond distance between institutions in the Netherlands, and then also enhance this program attractiveness, increase student enrollments, and then create a competitive edge in the higher educations. So I believe by prioritizing program quality, relevance, and student support, institution can attract and retain students based on the value and impact of their educational offering. Thank you.
Ferdi Widiputera, the time appointed for defending your thesis has passed. The degree committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and your defense. I will request that you and your company await the results of our deliberations and our return. Ferdi Widiputera. The degree committee, here present online, has assessed the quality of your thesis and your defense. In view of its positive verdict, and taking into account your previous qualifications, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. Professor Groot is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom. I invite your supervisor to take the floor.
Do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest, transparent, independent, and responsible?
I promise.
By the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present online, I hereby confer upon you, Ferdi Widiputera, the degree of doctor, and grant you all the rights attached to it by custom and law. As evidence of this, you will soon receive the degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary, and the supervisor, affixed with the official seal of the university, shown by the beadle. Congratulations, Ferdi.
Thank you very much.
Dear Dr. Widiputera, dear Ferdi, it's a great honor and pleasure to be the first to congratulate you with your doctorate degree. I also do this on behalf of Christoph. We both feel proud about what you have achieved. You've written an interesting dissertation that increases our knowledge and insight on diversity in higher education in the Netherlands. The strength of your dissertation is multifold. It quantifies diversity in student enrollment in programs and institutions in higher education and shows that increases in student enrollment go together with less diversity at the bachelor level and with more diversity at the master level. This is consistent with the aims of the bachelor-master structure to have broad bachelor programs and more specialized master programs. Your study also shows that the distance between similar programs is associated with more student enrollment. It's not quite clear how the causality runs here, but I interpret this that universities create similar programs in areas where interest for these programs is higher. This at least seems to be inconsistent with the aims that universities should develop distinct profiles and programs. A third finding is a positive relation between student satisfaction and student enrollment. My reading here is that larger programs are better able to cater to the needs of students and receive higher satisfaction scores. In the fourth paper, you find a significant relation between a dismissal policy in the first year and eventual graduation rates, which suggests that the dismissal policy does have the intended effect of making programs more efficient. These are all interesting and relevant findings. It's also noteworthy that 2 of your chapters in your dissertation have been published in peer-reviewed journals. It took some time for you to complete your dissertation. Consequently, some of the publications and the data used in your dissertation are a bit dated by now. You took a long and winding road to your doctorate degree. Your dissertation took some time to complete. You joined the top institute for evidence-based education research about 12 years ago. About 4 years later, when your scholarship ended, you needed to return to Indonesia to resume your previous position as data analyst at the Ministry of Education. Your PhD trajectory was a very useful experience for you. Even if you do not aim for an academic career, the skills that you have developed during your PhD research will undoubtedly be able to put to productive use in your current position at the Ministry of Education. You're also a networking person. In the acknowledgement section of your dissertation, you take the opportunity to extend your gratitude to your network here in the Netherlands, starting with the people from the ambassador and other people from the Indonesian embassy. Also, during the time you were here in the Netherlands, you achieved to build a large network within the Indonesian community in Maastricht. We will remember your warm hospitality while you were here in Maastricht, not only for your colleagues, but also for the Indonesian community here. In the acknowledgement section, you list some of the people from the Indonesian community who supported you here, and those from whom you received support from you. Also, memories about the rice table that you prepared for the Sugar Fest at the end of the Ramadan, we will all remember. You're also a family man. Your wife and 5 children were very close to your heart, and I remember you were very much involved in their well-being while here in Maastricht. Especially the achievements of your children in school mattered a lot to you. Although, for as far as I know, you and your family very much enjoyed your time in Maastricht, it was also a great change, especially for you. You had to adapt to an academic environment and to acquaint yourself with an academic way of thinking and working. You had to learn a lot of new things, especially with the econometrics. You also came from afar, but you managed to succeed. And here we are today, celebrating the end of this long journey. Finally, let me again congratulate you, Dr. Widiputera, with your achievement, also on behalf of Christoph. I also want to take the opportunity to thank the members of the opposition committee and the assessment committee for their efforts and work in evaluating your thesis and in providing opposition here today. I also want to extend our congratulations to your wife and children and everyone else who have taken the time to watch the live stream and to virtually celebrate this joyful event with you today.
Thank you very much, Wim and Christoph, and Ali estimate Ottoman, Prorector also.
Dear Dr. Widiputera, on behalf of Maastricht University, I would also like to congratulate you on the degree you have acquired. And if you're looking at the screen, I would like you to observe the slight change in your name from 5 minutes ago. I hereby declare this ceremony ended.